Welcome to the Primus Wildlife Advisory Interviews. Today we're visiting Palahala Ranch. Good day, Mr. Andrew. Thank you for having us. I think let's start off with a little bit of history. Tell us about yourself, the ranch, and where it all began.
You got it. Well, first off, yeah, I'm Andrew Pabelic, owner and operator of Palahala Ranch. Uh, yeah, it's a long story. I guess back in 1985 or so, we started dealing with exotics as family. Uh, my dad and his dad, a lot of my cousins, uncles, different, they're all ranchers and have been for a long time. So we kind of grew up around the ranching industry, and also we were involved in the oil field as well with my father's side of the family. Uh, but anyway, coming on, we started, like everybody else. You start with fallow and different things like that. We had animals. Imported the boar goats were the first ones. I think us and maybe Jurgen Schultz were right there about the same time that imported the boar goats in the USA. But anyway, along the way, we kept kind of upgrading, getting the kudu and the sable and, man, just everything. Grants, you name it, Damas. We pretty much raised everything, ostrich and emus, things like that. But kind of fell in love with the sable antelope along the way. And that kind of became my inspiration as to what I really wanted to focus on. Had a pretty decent kudu herd and some other things, and kind of got those out of the way, and just to make room for the sable, building it up. And actually, and I guess it was in 2005, basically just went almost 100% sable, raising those, focusing on them, because it was really difficult at the time to find sable. Uh, you just had to buy whatever you could find, and then whatever showed up at your doorstep and jumped off a trailer is what you got. And I went through a lot of sable, because there was a lot of hoof problems with the sable. There was, of course, horn problems, or infertile cows. You couldn't seem to have a calf. There are all kind of difficulties that you went through, and also too, just trying to find, the animal that fits your eye, right? That's one of the kind of the most difficult things to do along the way. It made sure everything worked out the right way. I tell people all the time, like I said, we're in the ranching industry, so culling animals was something that you did in order to improve your herd all the time. So trying to find the right mix of sable took a long time, because like I said, you want to have good feet. I wanted to have good bags to raise a big, healthy calf. I wanted straight, symmetrical horns. That was a thing that was really bad back then. It still is today in a lot of ways, where horns just kind of go in every different directions, right? So I wanted that symmetry, where they were. I love wide, I want them straight. I don't want the flare. So that was, trying to put all those pieces together along the way was part of it. So anyway, 2005, I made the decision to kind of go sable, and kind of stuck with that, all these years, and have really enjoyed it. I love sharing what I've learned about the sable with people. They're a very fascinating animal. I go some places that are really wild and crazy, but they can be a really domestic, gentle animal in the right conditions, as long as you're working with them along the way. But anyway, that's pretty much about where we're at today. I know we're going to get to a lot of into the weeds, so to speak, but that's what it's all about, really learning the little things that you need to learn, to take care of these animals.
Well, Mr. Andrew, I think we all would love to know what attracted you to the Zambian sables, and how did you acquire them?
All right, this is the kind of crazy part, right? So I'm sitting around like I had sable, uh, getting those better, and I saw in a article where a Western Zambian bull named Maponi sold for 1.96 or 1.97 million American dollars in 2015. And I'm sitting there looking at that. I said, Africa has got thousands and thousands of sable. What made this sable so special to bring this much money? So I started digging into it, and as I dug into it, I found out that he was a Western Zambian, raised by Pete Warren. And B.J. Vosser, there in South Africa, had bought this animal. So I started digging into it, and I did some research, and I found out that the United States had imported some, and they went to the San Diego Zoo. So that's when my quest started. I said, man, if they have these, and just looking at them, the beauty of that animal, and they were so much bigger than anything I'd ever seen. I think Mopane was like 48.5 inches, something like that long at 4.5 years, or 48 inches at 4.5 years old. That's incredible. And so anyway, so I went on a quest to find them, and we did track them down to the San Diego Zoo. They had sent them out to one of their partner ranches. Basically, they got. I don't know if you want to get into the weeds on this.
Oh, yeah, let's go there.
All right. Well, initially talking, and I'll probably get more in detail. When I went to South Africa, I did a lot of research because it's kind of hard to find out what was going on here. But Pete Warren told me that 7 of the animals from the Sable Ranch there in South Africa were imported in the USA. They were initially going to do Angolian, but the Angolians had not cleared quarantine, hadn't been quarantined correctly, so they switched gears and brought these Western Zambian sable over. And I don't even think the San Diego Zoo at that time knew how important that the Western Zambian were going to be to the South African market, as it flourished and how well they've done. I'm thinking they've probably done just as good as Angolian would have done. But anyway, so they sent 6 over. They re-quarantined them. One of them didn't pass quarantine for some reason, went back to the Sable Ranch and went back into the herd that went into South Africa. And then the 5 came over, and shortly after they got here, one of them died. So there was, 4 or 5 animals. 5 came over, thinking maybe there was 4 that they were breeding to. Anyway, they kept them pure all those years, and they were really pure and line bred and different things like that. It was hard for them to keep them alive, and they weren't raising very many babies. So they sent them to this other ranch to see if they could raise them. They couldn't. They didn't have a whole lot of luck either. I had been raising sable for a long time. I offered to take them and free of charge because I just loved the Western Zambian, the way they looked and everything about them, just to see if I could help them, raise them and move along. Anyway, as the years went, when I first found them, there was 3 big bulls, and there was, I believe it was 5 cows. And then the hard winter we had in 2002, whatever it was, ended up losing most of them. They only had like 3 cows left, and a couple of bulls. And then they got down eventually to 1 pure cow left and 3 bulls, basically. But my first genetics, one of the bulls went to another private rancher in U.S. that really wasn't supposed to breed it, but he did. And right when I saw those animals, I knew exactly what it was. I mean, they're clear as a bell. They have a black mass. Their horn structure is unique. Their manes are unique. And I was able to acquire one of those half-blood bulls that was bred to a Zambian cow, and that was a bull we called Z-Man. And he's the one that kind of kicked me off. And then later on, I was able to acquire all the rest of the Western Zambian, the pure Western Zambians that were left. So that is our foothold into it and how we got started and building on from there.
Do you consider Z-Man to be one of your biggest genetic contributors?
He was the biggest one that got me kicked off, because, we're bred to him. And when the babies hit the ground, you could tell a big difference right away. The size of the animals, the structure of the animals, the hair quality, different things just changed. The animals became so much healthier, so much vibrant, that hybrid vigor that it put into the animals. I think anybody that's out there breeding sable, the diversity is not really big in the sable that we have here in the USA. So when you hit them with something just a little new, even if it's only a quarter, whatever it may be, just something to give them a spark, it's remarkable the change that you'll see in the sable right away.
What uniquely stood out about these Zambian sables? What was the big thing that you noticed that was different?
And of course, the biggest thing is probably the horns, right? I mean, multiple. Pete Warren, his bull Pete, was the first bull in South Africa that went over 50 inches. He got up to 53 inches. Your normal sable in South Africa, your Southerns, were still pushing that 42, 43 inch mark. Like we struggle with here in the USA. That blood, of course, him, Dries Visser, a lot of the ones that imported some of these sable antelope. As I was digging into them, trying to research where they were, then I was researching, the people that had them and the programs that they were building and the things they were achieving. Them and Thabo Thalo, it was just the way they were things. And of course, B.J. Voster, the way the sable started blowing up, the increase in size. Because regardless of anybody tells you, increment growth in sables is very difficult. Every inch is a big gain. It can take you several decades to get 3 or 4 inches. But with the Western Zambian, of course, like the influence of that, all of a sudden it seemed like almost overnight, people were able to start getting close to 50-inch bulls or over 50-inch bulls. And of course, now they're getting them 60-inch bulls. So, and the characteristics of the Western Zambian sable, they have this, a beautiful black mass. Some of them have a little white on them, which is no big deal. Their horns seem to be a little heavier. The rings are a little bigger, wider apart. Where a Southern stable may grow up to like 50, 55 ring. A Western Zambian may only have, 45, 47, maybe some more. But they're so much wider and bigger that tends to lead to bigger horns as well. And you don't have the breakage that you normally have in the Southern. But besides that, they're really a clean-looking sable. Their manes are a lot shorter. As you and I, we drove around today and we were looking at the sable. We were pointing that out, looking at stuff. I don't have that shaggy mane. Their hair quality, their hair coat is a lot tighter and cleaner as well. As the more West Zambian you get into them, the prettier coat to me they have. They don't have that longer, shaggier hair on them, and it's a subtle difference, but it's a noticeable difference. They also, on the rear ends and stuff, they don't have quite as much white. Of course, they don't have near the white and stuff that the Southerns have on their face. The cows tend to be a light golden color to a kind of a reddish color versus Southern sable that are kind of more on the blackest side. And
You can clearly see that out there. It's pretty obvious.
It's really obvious, isn't it? And I've had people say, "Oh, my cows are light too," but when they come out and see, it's a pretty noticeable difference. How the colors they come. And things that people that've been raising sable for a long time. When it's a female, of course you'll know she's bagging, she's fixing to have a calf. But if you're really watching them close, they'll always turn a little darker, and that's why you see some Southern sable antelope that are females look almost black because they're getting close to having a baby. Man, they'll turn really black. The Western Zambians will do that too, but of course they'll never. It'll just turn either a darker gold or a darker red. But things like that, and the conformation is one thing that I always, I raise animals in 4-H and FFA, so I was always taught, how to look for quality in an animal, and that encompasses everything, the body, the way they walk, the way they move. But the Zambians tend to have like a higher rump on them versus a Southern sable. A Southern sable is a little slender and kind of down in the back hips a little bit. Nothing wrong with that, but these tend to be a little higher, a little rounder. Carry to me, it seemed like they carry a better body conditioning, throughout their body, and it may be something to do with that hybrid vigor that I'm talking about. But even in Africa, you kind of see that that body composition stays in pretty good shape with them. And you'll also notice too when they do have a baby, they won't lose a whole lot of weight like it seems like a Southern does, or they don't seem to get as thin. And it may be because we're able to carry a little more conditioning to get that conditioning on, so when the baby does start nursing on the mom, that it doesn't pull it down so hard.
So you've had you obviously had a very small and limited genetic year. So what was the hardest decision you had to make, to make this work?
Ooh, it's a good question, Adrian, but it's an honest question, right? Something when I first got to Z-Man, I could start seeing how things were going. it really got me pumping. When I started seeing those babies coming, the little bulls growing out, different things like that. And actually, then I bred back to him again because at that time I was really struggling on what I was going to do. How can I keep this thing going with just one bull, and very limited supply out there. So, during the second time, breeding back to his daughters, which turned out to be hugely successful. It's not something you want to do a whole lot, but I don't think it hurts you to line breed as long as your offspring are showing really quality stuff. I've got some amazing animals out of that type of breeding. But to answer your question, so that's when I really started hammering down on trying to get what was left of the Western Zambian. And people think that there's some records broke on how much sable bring in the U.S. Trust me, nobody has come close to breaking the record that I had to pay for these Western Zambians to get them. My wife was really upset. We were going to redo the house and different things like that, and I had to put all that on hold. But it was a tough decision, but it was one that I just felt in my heart that I had to make and had to do and had to take. And I had talked to some people, some geneticists and different things. This is going to be a really close knit group. I'm going to need some help making sure that we breed them right, that we don't make the wrong decisions. That we bring these along. It's going to be slow. It's not going to be quick. But if we make the right decisions, do the right things on the breedings, how we breed them out, come back, cross them back, this program is sustainable for a long time. So that's why you see a little bull like Zarambe. He has been really nowhere in a picture for a while because I have to stick to a plan. I don't want to jump ahead of it and shrink everything real fast. I want to grow it out. Then we'll come back and we'll push it back out. So there's a lot of, it's not as easy as people think. There's a lot of planning that goes into it, and it's a long plan. This is a multi-year. It's not just 5 years down the road, 10 years down. It's like 15 years down the road. You're looking at how you're going to breed these animals out, where you're going to go with them, when you're going to come and bring them back in, and then when you explode them off again. So there's a lot of little nuances there that have to be planned out and done and thought about and studied. And, of course, along the way, you're looking at the results, what you're getting. You're measuring those results. As you know, we measure everything we do to make sure that we're heading in the right direction each and every time we mate something. So, it's still a long road ahead of us. But I think with the team that we've surrounded ourselves with, I feel pretty confident that we're going to be successful.
You touched a little bit on Zarambe, but when he was born, did you ever think he was going to turn out quite the bull he is today?
I really didn't know he was. You always hope, especially when you start seeing a little bull that comes out there and he's got these long tips, and you've really never seen that before from anything else. You've been raising sable for 20 years, and you've looked at thousands, and I've never seen a little bull have tips like that, start getting his first little ring. So I knew something special. I wish in my heart of hearts, I thought I knew how to manage sable pretty good in a way, measure them, do different things like that. But on a bull like that or some of these other ones, if I'd have just capped him a little younger, piped him, you can see in a little picture that we posted, he should have been piped in that picture at that time. By all means, at least cap. But there are things you learn along the way as you go. It's part of it. And it's with everybody. Everybody in Africa, the same thing. Even when I talked to Francois with BJ Voster, he said, man, Mopani, we didn't know we should have capped him when they bought him. He was, like I said, over 48 inches at the time. He's 52 inches today, but they didn't start piping him until he was like 50 inches or so. He had broke some tips off his horn. That bull should have been 54, 55 inches now, but he's 52. And that's the thing. If you can't prove it, it's like Zarambe.
Yeah.
I feel like I know that, but I can't prove it. So he is 48 inches. Yeah. That's one thing I learned from South Africa. It don't matter what you think he is, what he should be, or this or that. It's what he is, right? Yeah. So that's where we are.
Could have, should have, would have, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So interesting.
Yeah.
And I know we're guessing right now, but How many inches do you think you lost?
I think he lost a total of 2.5. You know, but yeah,
It's heartbreaking, right?
yeah, he's 16.5 inches on a first, and I do something a little different, I guess, on the tips. That first ring, I'll mark it, so I keep at least I keep a consistent way to measure the tips, because they can wear them off or different things like that, or wear them down. So I try to at least make sure I do that. But yeah, he broke. He had real long. He had really slender tips to start with, and I should have been smarter. So they broke. You just chip them off. He'd break them kind of fairly easy. But yeah. But anyway, it is what it is. Lesson learned, and we'll get better in the future. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Obviously, things were changing in your herd, and there's call it upgrades, so to speak. But when did people actually start noticing that there's a difference in your sables, or when did it happen?
Well, Adrian, as you know, I send all my hair into, when I had Z-Man, I started sending all my hair samples into South Africa to do DNA work, finding out the monoclonal, the nuclear breakdown of each animal in order to be able to select breeders and stuff as I moved through. Well, when I sent the hair in with my West Zambians, uh, they called me up shocked. They said, where did you get West Zambian? There's no West Zambian in the U.S. They're in South Africa. So then I had to explain where I had got these Western Zambians. So then, of course, with that kind of threw up the red flag that these were legitimate animals that they traced back to Big Boy, to Mandala, to Nike, to all the big famous bulls in South Africa. So at that time, it really started piquing interest. People said, well, he's really got them. It's for real. Let's go out and have a look. And of course, during that time, I've been very fortunate. I've been able to meet a lot of people in South Africa that came over, and a lot of times they just want to come over and see for themselves that there truly is Western Zambians in the U.S.
I'm sure that was a huge day when you got that result.
It really was. Yeah, I knew, but you don't know until you get the DNA back, right? And once we confirmed that, it was all good from there. So yeah, I was very happy.
That's awesome stuff. Well, you don't have to answer the next question if you don't want to, but I gotta ask, what percentage is Zarambi?
I don't know if I want to answer
That's a good answer.
No. He's in the high 70s, like the high 70s.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is awesome stuff. And well, as the big question that does come in with all the West Zambian focus that we're doing, what significance remains within the Southerns, and or shall we rather call them the Southern hybrids of Texas?
Well, of course, we have a whole lot more Southern than we do anything else, and like the even Pete Warren, when he would a lot of his Western sable that he bred to, were Southerns, and he'd always get them up there to 80%. He would always call them, the 7/8 Zambians. Once he got them up kind of high, he'd classify it as that. But so the Southern sable are going to play a big role with us as they do in South Africa. Uh, South Africa the Southern sable brings some things to the table that the Western Zambians don't, or the Zambians don't. But in Africa nowadays, a lot of them, they're growing huge horns that have southern monoclonals on the sable that they grow in South Africa, and which is a great thing. A lot of people don't even care anymore if it's a West Zambian or a Southern or what it is. It's just how big is it, and that's another market all within itself.
Well, sir, I gotta ask, within the Southern Sables and even in the Zambians, is there any underrated traits that you'd like to point out or talk about?
Ah, traits and stable that are under. Well, I think all the traits that we have within each and every, I guess, monoclonal type sable, right? Whether it's your southern West Andean, your Western Zambian, your Zambian, whatever it may be, your Anatolian. There's traits within all those animals that are really sought after in life. I mean, like this southern. Today, and there's still some breeders, Crown breeding in South Africa, breeds some tremendous southern animals. He's got some over 60 inches. you know, and the people, of course, a lot of people, all your ranches, or a lot of them, I'm gonna say 80% of them have gone kind of toward the West Zambian. But every one of them does have Southern influence in their animals. Southerns, they turn black a whole lot quicker than the Western Zambians. So that's an important thing that people utilize a lot, because people don't want to sit out there and because the Western Zambians, like my bulls, they really don't turn black till they're 4 or 5. They'll stay kind of a reddish type color, then they'll turn over black. And that's something that was kind of harmful for the Western Zambian Africa, to be truthful with you. These bulls were staying red too long. They didn't turn black for the hunters. So a lot of people do breed the southern end of their animals to make sure they turn that black. And ain't nothing prettier than a big black bull.
Yeah.
So those things are important. And like I said, and southern are making their way. It's been a little tougher on that side of it. I guess it was like back in 1990 or the late 80s, where everybody in Africa started realizing that they were running out of hunting bulls. So that's really brought on the farming and ranching of the sable antelope. People started and they went through all the hardships that we went through here. And talking to them, with the parasites, they have parasites worse than we have over here. So when they had them in little pens trying to breed them, lost a lot of animals due to worms and different things like that. So it was a lesson learned for them too, how to manage those, whether they're going to rotate them or put them in bigger pens, or how you're going to manage those sable, and a lot of learning curves for them as well. But no, along with all of it, like I said, there was a lot of southern animals in South Africa, of course, right? So a lot of the animals over today, a lot of your big animals over today, are an influence of the Western Zambian and the southern, combined to produce a really superior animal.
Sir, more and more people are starting to understand the value of a cow in their herd. But in your opinion, how much value do they actually add?
To me, the cows are as or more important than the bulls. I put a tremendous amount of focus on my cows. I measure my cows. I count their babies, how they're doing, how long it takes them to have their baby, how big and strong of a baby calf they raise. The bull is only 50%. And if you do not have a cow that's just as superior as that bull is, you're not going to get very much. You're just going to get an average animal. And nobody can probably tell you better than that than people that the fallow market. A lot of people got really big bulls, bred them to just baseline does, and what'd you get? Majority baseline fallow. You would get you'd get a diamond in the rough every once in a while, but that shows you the importance of how big the female is. And also go back to even when we imported the Boer goats, and I brought a man over here by the name of Theon Botha, and we were talking about the bulls, and he told me at that time, man, that was back in the 80s, I guess. He said, Andrew, said, you're never going to produce a big bull, trophy bull of your own, unless you've got great cows. And I've always taken that into effect. So the cows have always been a huge stay of mine. And plus, too, they're going to really be in your herd a lot longer than the bull will. Now, you may have some of his genes on there, but, the cows, they'll carry on. Their siblings will carry on. The cow that you keep will be out of that cow. So it's really important to have a good quality cow when you're getting started.
Yeah, people really don't see the value of their female stock, and they really need to pay attention to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I watch those cows so much, just the way they walk, the way they move, their disposition. I do like calm animals, the deal too, and you're raising cattle, if one wild one in there will mess up your whole herd, so we want to make sure that, and that, unfortunately, that's usually the animals that are out there for sale, either in the little auctions, Elon auctions that are out there, or from your brokers, they're selling animals a lot of times that are problem childs for other people, unfortunately.
Well, sir, we know that you're trying to, breed to the highest percentage of West Zambian sables that you possibly can. But what is your favorite trait within the hybrid vigor, or at least, in any of these animals that you've bred till this point?
It's going to be hard for me to come down to one trait because, but you're right. You're trying to keep them as high percentage you can, and sometimes just because it's high percentage, it may not have the traits that I really like. Right. So the traits are, again, the color, the overall composition of that animal, and then the horn quality is something really that I'm saying is really uniquely kind of different in a way. I mean, the bases on the cows start getting bigger. The rings become more defiant. It seems like some of the, with the more, and this isn't true for all of them. There's some sables that really cows that really put on good rings, but these seem to be just a little thicker, a little heavier, and then the seem to be a little more defined. And the tips, I won't say I love long tips on an animal. As we're out there today looking at little bulls, that huge long tips, which really I feel like it really gives you a head start when you're building that antler. But yeah, so, good horn definition. I like the mass that they're producing. I love the body styles, the body types, and the amount of conditioning that these animals can hold. So an animal that holds really good condition is one, that you want to keep. They're easy to maintain. If you get droughts, you get whatever, or they have a baby, that animal is going to stay in great shape, going to make it, and have you another baby within 290 days. Where if a cow doesn't, she could take over a year easily to have another baby if it takes a toll on her.
Sir, where does nutrition and genetics get together for you?
I mean, genetics always plays a huge role, right? I mean, you're not going to get a racehorse out of a plow horse, right? So the genetics in that animal does have a lot to play with it. But also, too, just overall nutrition for an animal and the way you take care of them is a big role in how well that animal is going to develop and do in the future. If he's neglected anything while he's young, it hurts them all, whether it's a prize bull or whatever it may be. If he hasn't been like I said, if that mama doesn't give good milk, she does not getting the right nutrition to help raise that baby to get him on a good start and then carry it on through his life. So each and every day is important to the overall health of the animal and the development of that animal. So they both play a huge part. If you're neglecting one or the other, you're not going to be very successful.
Sir, you've been in the sable breeding programs now for quite a long time, and you have a lot of experience in it. But what do you think is the biggest mistake new breeders, or any breeders for that matter, really? What do you think is the biggest mistakes they make?
There's different things that I look at that I old tried and proven methods are good. And I'm just going to use this real quick. Say like on, I'm going to say like kudu. One thing I think, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings here, but one thing that everybody jumped on a bandwagon of was real wide kudu horns. They didn't have any curl in them, but they were really wide. Yeah, and flat. And what happened was everybody thought those were going to be real big bulls, and there's very few of them that made 60. Right? They just didn't get where they wanted to. I can also say the same thing with Inyala. You go through, there's nothing better than a Inyala with a good bell-shaped horn. Those are the ones that are going to get 34, 35 inches. And again, on that one too, I think U.S. we kind of made a mistake of just trying to get them wide, and they didn't get as long. So some of those things you've got to be careful of, just because it's a fad. Don't be real quick to jump on. Yeah. Also too, I think sometimes you want and I may be completely wrong about this, but on sable, you want their horns to kind of come out in front of their head and go up. I've never seen a sable that had real straight horns. They look real long, but they're never long. You look at that cow, she's a 26, 27-inch cow. She's got real straight horns. You say, man, that's a big cow. But when you put a tape line on them, like I said, they're 26, 27. It seems to me like the longest cows, the longest bulls have always come out, you want to come out, and you want an arch in the horn to add those extra inches. And if you can look at examples like the Armstrong bull that Talo has, or all the great bulls in the past. Big Boy, Madala, all them, Pete. All of them came out high and had an arch to carry that length to their head. Like I said, I see a lot of bulls that real straight, man. They look huge, and then when you knock them down, they're 41, 42. So, and I don't know. I don't know if that'll. Because a lot of things are proven wrong too. So I'm just saying this, but I don't know. Because Pete Warner said, man, something you don't want a bull with a big base. Well, you look at the Fisher, all of his stables now have like 14-inch bases, and he's growing over 55-inch horns. Pete's genetics, I guess, maybe within his stuff, he didn't grow long horns with the bigger bases. But it doesn't mean somebody might not be able to. But it just seems something, traits that you might look at that you might think twice about. Well, the first thing I would say to somebody just starting in a stable or any exotic is make sure you have the right pen for one. And I've always thought this, especially about the African species, right, that we've brought in. Sometimes I know a lot of people that have bought animals. They bring them in, they give them a year, they're not having babies or something like that, and they give up on them and sell them. I've always felt that these animals need to come into a ranch. They need to get comfortable, settle in. They need to know that they're going to be taken care of and that they're going to be able to get enough nutrition, enough grass, whatever it may be, to be able to raise a baby. I think it's something that's been instinctively mindseted inside of these animals for thousands of years, right? If you don't have the right habitat and I can't raise a baby, well, I'm not going to get pregnant and have a baby. And I don't think they get pregnant and have a baby until they feel comfortable that they can take care of one, and then your program gets successful. But that's one of the most important things is making sure that we have the right pen for them. And it doesn't necessarily have to be big. It just has to be something that the animal feels comfortable in, can get away from stuff, move around in a little bit. It has some things to do, I guess, put it in that way. That would be one of the most important things to make sure you have in play. Don't buy the animal, then get the pen. Make sure you got the right thing. As far as traits in animals, man, there's so many things on that, Adrian. I don't even know where to start. It's you do want to go make sure that you are buying from a reputable buyer. And there's a lot of people out here that you can go to that will give you advice to help you out to make sure you get the right animals. If it's somebody just a quick hitter, just be a little careful of those type of things. And, it's always nice when whoever you're buying them from, that the ranch does put their name on it. I still, brokers have their place, and I utilize them a lot years ago. But if you're not selling it, and if I had something I was selling and I wasn't going to put it on my name, I would send it to a broker. I'm cutting my air tag out. He's not a Palahala, blah blah blah, whatever it may be. If it's an animal that's not that you don't have a lot of confidence in, or don't feel like it's the type of quality that you want to sell, that's the way you'd get rid of them. But if you're going to put your name on it, and a ranch puts its name on it, you probably feel pretty comfortable that it's a solid animal.
With all the new sable breeders in the industry, or just wildlife breeders in total, but how long does it take to establish a respectable sable breeding program, in your opinion?
Nowadays it's not that hard. It's not like it still is. Making sure that, and if you go out and spend some time, that goes back to your previous question as well, right? Go out and learn the animal that you're wanting to raise. Start looking at them, seeing the difference in them, seeing the quality of them. Learn how to judge one. Learn how to judge his appearance. How to auto look. things about that, what a really good animal should look like, and that'll help you a lot as well, not just taking somebody's word for it. But on getting started nowadays, there's a lot of real good animals out there that are available. There's a lot of good breeders out there, and I'm happy to know a lot of them. And I would recommend a bunch of them that will sell good quality stuff. And you're getting from that type of animal, you can be there fairly quickly. Within 4 or 5 years, fast. Not like it used to be. Yeah.
Well, sir, let's move on to nutrition. Tell us about your nutrition program.
Now, nutrition was a tough deal, especially in the early on. Used to we didn't have the feed mixes developed for horned animals. Basically, everything was geared up for whitetail. So you either had to feed, protein, 21% protein, but there was like a 17% deer breeder pellet. And I fed that for probably about 10 years before people started developing the correct feeds for the antelope species. And I remember even, I guess back in 2000. Anyway, I called Texas A&M. What do I need to feed sable? What protein content do I need to feed sable? Or horned animals from Africa? And I talked to a nutritionist there. I talked to a couple of them actually, and all of them told me it needs to be around a 14%. And I look now where the feed companies are, whether it's Leslie Nichols, Purina, Cargo, or any of them, Cargill, excuse me, their feed for the horned animals is around 14% protein. So that's a real good mix to go to. One of the most important things that you need to make sure that you're buying when you're getting feed is that it has good vitamins and minerals in with that feed, because without that, the animals will be really lacking. Sable need quite a bit of copper, and different things like that, magnesium, zinc, the things to help them grow antlers. And when people are feeding these really high protein feeds, those really aren't to put on conditioning to an animal. They're too high in protein. They burn it. They keep them kind of slim. And I think here in Texas, we get super, super cold, and you've got to put some flesh on your animals. And I always say, the spring, the summer, and the fall are the 3 months that I'm preparing my animals for the winter time. So I'm going to give them everything they need to eat, get them in the best shape as I can. That way, when that first cold front hits, that animal is ready to take a real tough winter. You can't wait to the last minute to try to throw a bag of corn out there and think this animal's going to make it. So use those months to get those animals in the best shape you can get them in.
So, sir, have you seen firsthand that nutrition has actually affected your horn development?
I don't know if I can say I can. Because as I get better quality of, like I said, over the years, my quality of sable has gone up through selection processes. And then also too, and it may be because now, I'm at a point where, I'm getting, 3 to 4 to 5 inches more of horn growth on animals. Is it the Western avian influence, or is it, some of it has to do with feed? I'm sure it's a combination of both, but it is important. The mineral aspect and vitamin aspect of your feed is a very beneficial part in building a good, strong horn and feet.
Yeah. So how important is stress reduction in your management system?
Stress probably kills more animals than anything else. Again, it goes back to making sure that you don't have a wild and crazy animal in your possession, in your herd, or whatever, that may keep the animals upset, or where they don't eat or do what they need to do, or scared to go to here, scared to go to that. But stress, anybody moving in animals, everybody's seen it. You take an animal, you turn them on a new place, and they'll sit there and walk the fence for 5 or 6 days. 7 days, and some of them will die walking that fence. You need to put water out along those fences. They kind of get blind. I don't know what to call it, but they'll get blind where all they know is just trying to look for a way out, and they don't realize they're thirsty until it's too late. They don't realize they're not eating. They've just got one mission, and they think they need to get out of that pen to the other side or whatever it may be. So that's a very stressful time for animals. But again, it all goes back. We were talking about a while ago, having the pen, the setting where an animal feels comfortable in that thing, where he can hide to try to alleviate some of that stress, where he feels like he can get to get away from something. Those little bitty things. It doesn't seem like much, but they go a long, long way.
Sir, one of the most exciting things in sable breeding is to watch the boys grow. But would you mind sharing with us what you look for in good bulls and how you manage your bulls? And just tell us a little bit about when is the best times to sell according to what you've seen, and how long would you like to hold on to a bull before you sell him, for instance? Just give us some good tips on how to do that best for bull management.
All right. Yeah, that's a lot packed into that question. Well, I guess I'm going to get in the weeds here a little bit, guys, but probably the first thing that people need to understand, when you're pulling your little bulls from your breeder pen, if you can, it's really nice to let them get 2 or 3 rings on them before you take them off their mother. Because one thing that can happen if you move a bull before, if he's put just on tip, if you move that little bull before he started putting rings on, it's like Adrian just talked about earlier, stress. If you move a bull that hasn't put rings on, you put him in a pen, he's trying to get back to mama. He's not going to lose just a little bit of weight, sitting there getting used to the pen, finding the water, all the things they do. And they can put on what they call the stress ring and start their growth of the rings earlier than you'd like. So that's one thing that I'll share. Second off, too, I guess, as you put them in, of course, and you're putting these little guys in, or I am, with a bunch of bigger bulls, that may be 2 or 3 or 4 years old. But what I normally do, I have a smaller pen that's probably about, 7 or 8 acres. And I'll always try to make sure I can put 5 or 6 little bulls in that pen. I won't just do one at a time. I like to wait till they've got a companion or 2 to put with them. So make sure we do that. Put 5 or 6 in that pen. Let them get real comfortable in that pen. Know where to hide. Know what to do. Know where all the food and water is. They're comfortable. They're putting weight back on. Everything's good. Now it's time to open the gate to turn them with the other bulls. And usually that goes really seamless. Really don't have any issues there. No problems at all. Then the next thing, your next decision is when you should cap or pipe a bull. Rule of thumb, kind of in South Africa, talking to them, if you have little bulls, they've got like the baby cap or, a gray type matter that grows on their horn. And as they get to about 15, 16, 17 months old, they'll start to wear that off, right? Where the picking, you'll see it start getting real shiny. Yeah. At that point, it's probably not a bad idea to go ahead and maybe capping the horn, because if it's shiny, that means they didn't wore off that baby cap, so they done lost inches, right? So, it's probably not. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's probably not a bad idea to go ahead and maybe put some type of cap to keep from wearing that off. Like Zarambe, I didn't do that. And I didn't. These are just lessons that I've learned along the way, guys. So take them as you see fit. But anyway, then as they do that, and then usually when they get to about 2 years old, maybe a little older, you'll start seeing that baby fat start coming off the horn. It'll get to the ring, get to the first ring, second ring, third ring. And one other thing too, I'm going to back up just a little bit. When you're moving those young bulls, and I've made this mistake, and I think everybody in the industry has, you do not grab those little young bulls by the horn. If you grab that bull by the horn and somebody twists it just a little bit or pulls it the wrong way, it'll grow crooked. So make sure you teach everybody, do not touch the horns. If you stop with that, you're going to have a whole lot straighter horns. So I just want to throw that in there as well. Once they get about, I don't know, Adrian, my deal's about 5 or 6 rings, then you're pretty safe to grab them. But anything lower than that, be really, really tender with them. But anyway, as they go up and that baby fat gets down to, past the ring, then you can go ahead and pipe a bull. So what I know. Huh?
You want a clean tip.
Yeah, clean tip. You want all the gray matter off of it. I want all the gray off whatever I'm going to be piping. Some people pipe them a little sooner, but I'll let that kind of get off, and then I'll go ahead and pipe them. And one thing I do too, I don't my pipe, I pretty much end it pretty close to the horn. So wherever you see the horn, the tip of the pipe is within probably an inch and a half. It's just long enough so I can stick the cap that I utilize inside the pipe into it. And also too, that way if I do knock them down, I can reach in there with a little screwdriver. I can feel that tip. I can remeasure him. I know where it is without having to take the pipe off. And if you are going to pipe them, you didn't make sure you drill adequate holes in it, for plenty of ventilation, to make sure that no moisture or anything sets in it. And what surprised me when I first started doing it, I would every 6 months I would knock them down and take it off and check it, and everything was good, but that's what we were kind of told to do at first, or everybody was saying to do. But as I went over to Africa, some of those bulls have had pipes on them 4 or 5 years, but it is a little drier over there most of the time. Did get a lot of rain this year, but they as long as they got the right amount of holes in them, feel good, they'll leave those pipes on them for a long time. And in managing bulls, that is a good tool, because now I've got these bulls in a pen, and I use, just FYI to everybody, the pipe I utilize is real heavy straight wall polyethylene pipe. It's a lot quicker, a lot heavier than the stuff you have in a roll, but it stays on really well. It protects their horns. But anyway, what it also helps is when they do start fighting, and we're out there, Adrian and I are out there driving around today, and the bulls are fighting, chasing each other around a pen. But when they got those pipes on their horns, they're a whole lot less likely to hurt another stable or to break a horn, by having it on. So it does make it a lot easier to be able to manage your bulls. You don't have a bunch of bulls out there with sharp horns stabbing each other all the time. It takes that out of the equation.
Excellent. No, that's good. So at what point do you think, at what age do you want to start selling bull calves?
Yeah. I would really love to keep them to 5 years old, but a lot of times that's not feasible or what you can do, out here. So I'm really trying to hold a hard and steady to keep them to their at least 4. That way it gives the person getting them. I want to make sure that everybody I sell to gets a 45-inch bull, and if it's out here and it hadn't been moved, it hadn't been stressed, it hadn't been, with cows, different things. It benefits that bull a lot to be able to reach his potential. So the longer I'm gonna leave, and I'm slowly getting to that point, but anyway.
Well, sir, I think it's safe that we can now tell people that, this year, Palala released 3 high percentage Serbian bulls into the industry. And I think, tell us why you thought it was time, or what do you think was the right time to do now? And tell us who those lucky ranchers were that, that ended up with those young bulls, and, just share a little bit about it.
Well, I guess first, let me touch on this real quick. I understand, the ranches were wanting bulls, and I understand people want them, and it's hard for me not, when somebody is wanting to really get into a program, and I know that myself, when I got my bulls, I couldn't wait, because the genetics weren't out there, right? It's not like we just have a bunch of these genetics just everywhere. It's not like it's a Southern where I can wait 5 or 6 years because, man, I've got, the 1,000 more. There's only a handful of these type of bulls out there with this type of genetic, so I can understand people want to, and I would too. If I was in that boat, I would be wanting to breed these animals into my animals to get that Zambian, that hybrid vigor going as quick as we could. But yeah, we sold three three bulls, to Flying P, to 5K, and to M3, to Marcos. Yeah, real high percentage bulls. These bulls were 3.5 years old, I think 42, 43 months old, something like that, and all of them were over 40 inches, and I think that's saying a lot for the program. Yes, I would have loved to keep them here for another year. And actually, I asked him, man, let me keep them, as they're going to be a whole lot bigger if you just let me hang on to them for a little bit longer. But I can understand that in the long run, it's going to get them further ahead, right? You're going to sacrifice something, but you get a lot further ahead, as you move along. So those tools, but boy, I'm really trying hard to make sure that I can hand off, bulls when they're older, just to make sure they develop the way they need to develop and the way these Zambians can develop when managed correctly.
Obviously, MD3 and Flying P is up there near the Panhandle, north of Abilene, and 5K Ranch is just south of Brownwood. How do you think these habitats these bulls are going to is going to affect their growth?
I think as long as we're getting good quality feed is going to help. Nutrition, and it's the pens and stuff that we put them in look to be really, really nice. I think as long as it's not, it is a little bit of a culture shock, but
going to lose some growth just especially from the move.
Yeah. The new surroundings, trying to get through it, and that's going to be something I'm going to track with those ranches, to see where those bulls are, because we got several more over there, right, the same age, right in line with them, and I'll be able to compare my notes and things with these versus the ones that we move. So I think that's going to go a long way too in helping decide on when we need to kind of move these bulls or when the best time is.
I want to go back to those bulls, them all being between 3.5 and 4 years old and run about that 40-inch line. That's a pretty big achievement. I feel these ranches got really good quality bulls, but how do you feel at the moment about these animals that you put out there? Are you proud of them? Are you happy with the quality? And what is your personal input about that specifically?
Yeah, I really do. It was there was years and years ago, there was a lot of time, man, 40 inches was just a dream that you had that you could get a bull to, and now to see it just super consistent, hitting 40 and over, 3.5, before they're 4 is a big feat. And we're starting to see that a little bit more in other people's animals too. I know there's some sold at auctions that were like 4.5, 42 inches, something like that. So I mean, you're starting to see some of those come along. But being right there at the forefront of that is really a big thing. And all the hard work, the selecting, the going through, like I said, the cows, make sure you're doing the right things along the way. And and I think too, and those bulls, I didn't pipe them until they were like 3 years old. They probably lost an inch or two of horn off themselves. By not. So I'm learning how to manage better. So I feel like I know a lot about Sable, but then sometimes I feel like I don't know a damn thing about Sable. So. It's all we learn each and every day, and some of the mistakes that we build off of them, learn from them, correct them, and move on. But no, if you're not getting better every day, you're going backwards, and I feel like we're moving forward.
Mr. Andrew, do you mind telling us a little bit more about these 3 young bulls that you put out there?
Yeah, those are pretty unique, that class, and I've got a lot of those animals, especially in the female class that I keep. Those are what I would call my double Z-Man sons, and I've got a lot of double Z-Man daughters that are really big. All of those were double Z-Man sons. Very high percentage in Zambian. The first ones we got from Z-Man weren't all that high percentage. 35%, 40%. And I'll tell you one in particular, one that jumps right at me because he's got a name. Flying P took a bull they named the Flying Dutchman. And that bull is, I think, green 217. Yeah, green 217. He's 82% Zambian. A beautiful bull. That bull, big rings on him. He was at least a couple inches over his monthly, and that's kind of what I go off of when I'm tracking bulls. I keep a chart, the day they were born, the day they were measured, and then beside that, I keep it in months. I don't put it in years, I put it in months. So, 24 months old, he was 26 inches or whatever it was. So usually if they're over their age, they're on a pretty good track to be a pretty good bull. And all those are pretty fall in that similar line. But since we know the Flying Dutchman, but yeah, those are pretty special. They produce some really great animals, and I'm really thankful they all went to really good places, and the people that really understand what the programs and stuff they're working on to get and improve the quality of stable that we have here in the U.S. And I think it's going to be a big deal, and I know they're going to do it the right way. So that makes me feel a lot better about letting something like that go.
Sir, a few days ago we released some footage about your young bull that you just recently put out on your breeding herd, and Zarambe, and it's pretty exciting stuff. But the 3 bulls you just released is kind of following in his footsteps. Pretty exciting stuff. But tell us a little bit about this bull, and give us some a little bit more input on him. I think we're all kind of dying to know just kind of what to expect from him.
All right, Zarambe. Yeah, he's kind of a special bull for me because he was one that I could really, even though I didn't manage the best I could, at least I could manage him somewhat. Like Z-Man, I had to get him to a breeding pen as soon as I could because there was none of these genetics out there. Zurich the same way. Zurich, I don't think he's ever known a time when he wasn't with a cow. And Zalo about the same way. Put him with one.
You sold Z-Man. When did you sell Z-Man?
I sold Z-Man in, I think it was 2023. I think is when it was.
And that was the first high percentage Zambian that you sold.
Correct. Yes.
Sorry, to
Yep. Nope. So anyway, yeah, I got to play with Zarambe, and it was pretty special, because when you measure a bull and they're 4 and 5 inches above their monthly age, there's something really, really special, fixing to happen. Like I said, I should have managed his tip because he had real long, thin tips, but and it's really good to be able to watch him develop. It was really a proud day for me. I turned him loose finally in a breeding pen this year. But I guess getting back to that, I talk about the breeding and the strategies of doing these animals. And last year I knew he was something really, really special. And I want to put him in a breeding pen, but I've got a plan, and you got to stick to them, right? So I've got to make sure that I breed the bulls that I want to breed, the times, the length, until I get where I don't feel like I should breed them anymore, right? And I have to stick. I can't jump. If I start jumping that process, well, then I just blow the whole thing out of the water, right? So I had a plan. I'm sticking to my plan come hell or high water. And so I just I left him there until the time was right, till I got what I needed. And now I can put him back on. Then I can, move forward with everything I have in place without throwing anything into it. But it's pretty special to be able to put him in there, especially over some Zurich daughters, the double Z-Man daughters, some Zala. It's every year it's so wonderful to sit out there and see how these thing is progressing. As you and I drove around today, like I said, the tips on these young little bulls out here is just amazing to me. To be able to see that, the overall how heavy they are at such a young age, is really good. And this one here, I'm really, really anticipating. It's hard to wait, but it's a journey. It's nothing. This is nothing quick. I know I'll get here, and I really can't wait to get him and put him over here over some of these West Zambian Zalo cows, those kind of things. But it will come at a time when it's meant to be, and we're just going to ride it like we need to. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Well, sir, what lasting impact would you like your herd to leave on the industry?
Man, if I really in my heart of hearts, I've told people, I don't know if I'll ever have, grow the biggest bull in the U.S. because I'm going to concentrate on it. Don't get me wrong. I'm in the race. But to be honest with you, I think my number one goal needs to be to make sure that I'm staying on the track that I need to get these animals as pure as I can. So when people do take them, that they're going to get the big explosion of the hybrid vigor, right? So if somebody else has got a really good program and they take one of these bulls or they take some of these cows and put it on their stuff, that they're going to get that explosion, to get these 60-inch bulls. So, I just want to be somewhere in there where played a part in helping the market in the U.S. to be the best it can be.
Sir, if you can improve one thing in the sable industry, today, what would that be?
I would bring Armstrong from South Africa over to here. No, there's a bunch of bulls that I would do. But East Bishop's got a bunch. Everybody, there's so many great bulls over there. No, and I like each and every one of them, man. They just, going over there talking to them the way that, their struggles. And, like I said, they started in 19, I guess Dries brought his herd over in 93, 94, something like that. They've been at this for a pretty good while, but they've made huge strides to get where they are. And like I said, it's a journey, but now I just think, and I know the U.S. People here are entrepreneurial. They look at things maybe a little different than some others, and there's technologies and stuff that we have that I probably don't have available to me. Some people will, that we'll be able to pick out some of these genes and stuff, right, to push things along probably at a faster rate. I just look at stuff like the boar goats. U.S. is built a little different everywhere else. South African man and boar goats, they got a lot of skin on their neck, just big, muscular, meat-looking things. But in the U.S., their thinking is how fast and they want the least amount of waste product on animals they can get, right? So now you look at the boar goats here. Well, they have slimmed that neck down. They've increased the back line. They do things to get them from baby to marketing, right, with the least amount of waste. And I know, and I think about that here in the U.S. as well with the sable market. You want to get something, of course, now it's all breeding, but there will be a time when it's, a hunting market. You're going to want to be able to get that bull to 50 inches as quick as possible. And that's one of the things that the Southerners do struggle with in South Africa, right? They may get to 50 in 5 or 6 years, but to get up to 60, it's going to take them 12 years. Where Western Zambia can get there in 6. And I just think that with the American mentality that we have, the quicker you can get that dude to market, the better you're off, instead of having to speed it for 6 more years and, take the chances of breaking a horn or whatever. So, a lot of those things to think about, right? But it's it all in play. But you think about those kind of things, when you're looking at the aspect that we look at as we move forward. So,
well, sir, I'm excited to be on this journey with you, and I'm excited to see these young bulls that are out there growing to the big shoes they got to fill for Zarambe. And I really appreciate you taking the time to do this little interview today. And hopefully we'll do another one soon. Thank you so much.
All right. Yeah, I want to thank you real quick too, Adrian. No, it's always a pleasure, having you come out, talk sable. And you know how I get, our gate's always open to people that want to come out here and just look and see if they can learn something or whatever it may be, or teach me something. I learn something all the time. So, no, it's good to be in a community with a lot of, not only ourselves, but there's a lot of great breeders here in the U.S. that are really working hard to make things happen. 5K Flying PBM3, you got Star Ash, you got Kobe, you just got bunches of people, Mossy Rocks. I don't want to forget anybody out there, guys. J Bar J, got to thank them too as well, right? They bought one of the cows at Star Ash auction, but some good quality animals. But it's great to see these people, everybody just jumping into it. We're all got our plans, And I think that's one of the most important things you can do, right? When you do have a plan, to stick with that plan. We're all going to probably go in a little different directions, trying to end up to where we're going to be. Some of us are going to guess right, some of us are going to guess wrong, but we're all guessing. So, no, it's going to be a fun journey, and let's have fun doing it, guys. Thanks, Adrian.
Thank you, sir.
Well, we hope you guys took something away from today's interview with Mr. Andrew at Palahala. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Other than that, we will bring something new to the table soon, and we're excited to see what the next interview will bring.